Let me get this out of the way and say that Birdo is my favorite Mario character ever. Maybe even my favorite character in general. So everything I'm about to say comes from a place of love. In general, Birdo's popularity as a character has soared a bit over the last several years, in no small part due to her being one of the few queer characters the Mario series can claim as its own, as well as one of the first examples of a transgender video game character overall, first appearing in 1987 with Yume Kojo Doki Doki Panic, aka Mario 2. The gist of it is that the instruction booklet for the game includes a description of Birdo that basically says, you know, your standard 1980s fare. I'm sure the manual writer was patting himself on the back for this stroke of unheard comedic genius. Anyway, this line is present in all versions of the manual for Doki Doki Panic, Mario 2, and Mario USA. Quick unscripted side note, the reason that her name is listed as Ostro here is because they mixed her up with a different enemy from the game in the credits, so the manuals kind of went with that and they didn't correct it until later. In fact, this whole mess is why she's called Strozzi in Italian, which actually comes from the word for ostrich. It's really stupid. Anyway, and it's basically sprung into life of its own ever since, to the point where Birdo is trans is basically the one thing a lot of people know about her. But there is another little thing about Birdo that comes from an exact same manual, which is what I want to talk about, that being her supposed preferred name of Birdetta. This is a thing that I've seen pointed out online a fair bit, claiming that since she's said to prefer being called Birdetta in the Mario 2 manual, this proves that Birdo is actually supposed to be her dead name, and we've all been addressing her wrong for the past 40 odd years. And I have some thoughts about this. I've actually been meaning to talk about this on video for a pretty long time, but I have all the self-motivation of this guy, so I only got around to doing it now. In fact, Drew Mackey of the blog Thrilling Tales of Old Video Games, which I highly recommend, actually ended up touching on this there in the meantime. And he brought up some points that I hadn't considered before, so while most of this is born out of my own thoughts and research, I do gotta give some props to my man Drew here. So, Birdo, Birdetta, what's going on here? And why do I prefer to go with the former if it's supposed to be her dead name? Well, frankly, there's very little evidence that she's ever gone by Birdetta or has ever wanted to go by Birdetta, but there is quite a bit of evidence to the contrary. So what evidence do we have for Birdetta? Well, the Mario 2 manual for one, and then there's her trophy in Super Smash Bros. Brawl, which calls her a creature of indeterminate gender, some would say would rather be called Birdetta. And that's it. These are the only official references to the name Birdetta in any official Nintendo games. Notably, neither of these two entire examples come from the character herself. The Brawl trophy doesn't even say she prefers it, just that some would say she does. So yeah, there you go. An NES manual from 40 years ago and a Smash Bros. Trophy. That's your evidence. So what evidence is there to the contrary? Well, to start, while she's never called herself Birdetta, like, ever, Birdo has introduced herself as Birdo on a number of occasions from past to present. Super Mario RPG, Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Winter Games, Fortune Street, Mario Golf Super Rush, Super Mario Party. Keep in mind, Birdo doesn't often get written dialogue in the game she appears in, so I think 5 examples alone is a pretty good showing. And in terms of spoken dialogue, I mean, even though you wouldn't expect any kind of real words to come from a character who sounds like, she does actually say her name out loud in Mario Kart Double Dash when you select her. And just in case you think it's ambiguous whether she is saying her name here, here's the Japanese version of the same voice line. Catherine is specifically what she's called in Japan and the rest of East Asia, once again stemming from Doki Doki Panic. That actually brings me to my next point, the Japanese equivalent to the Birdetta line. This actually makes no allusions to dead names or anything, instead of basically just saying that she likes to be called by the nickname Kathy. This could be construed to mean that Birdetta is simply a nickname, the English equivalent to Kathy, though I'll admit that I've never found this the most compelling argument against the name Birdetta, since the way the English version is written comes off a lot differently than the Japanese one. I can't really see Birdetta to be taken as just a nickname in this context. However, there is something interesting to be mentioned about Kathy still. In Mario & Luigi Superstar Saga, there's a scene where Birdo is talking to Popple, and in the Japanese version she basically says to him, "Don't call me Catherine, call me Kathy." Obviously the intent being that she wants to be called by her cutesy nickname by this character she's infatuated with. The English version of the line goes, "Don't call me Birdo, call me Birdie," which is along the same lines. To me in this context it says 2 things. 1, Birdetta isn't really the equivalent to Kathy, and 2, this is like the only time she's ever objected to be calling Birdo, and it's not because she finds it offensive, she's just being flirtatious. And that leads to what I think is the strongest argument against Birdetta. If Birdo was actually her dead name, why does she put it on all her paperwork? I mean, come on, you got Birdo Jewelry, Birdo Sportswear, the Birdo Beauty's baseball team. The Sunshine Airport terminal announcer calls her Miss Birdo in Mario Kart 8.
Passenger Ms. Birdo, please proceed to the information counter.
And we can't forget about Birdo watching. Like, there's no in-universe reason she couldn't go by Burdetta if she wanted to. Am I supposed to believe that people in the Mushroom Kingdom are tolerant enough to accept Birdo as a woman, but not tolerant enough for her to use her preferred name? With all that in mind, I think we can apply Occam's razor to this whole thing. So here are the two scenarios we have. A. Burdetta is living as a trans woman in the mushroom world, and everyone is accepting of her identity, but she still chooses to go by her dead name at every opportunity, for no reason apparent to us, all the while masking her true feelings from everyone. Or B. Her name is just Birdo and the 40-year-old NES manual was wrong. Gee guys, I don't know what to think. That said, these are just my thoughts and opinions. I can't stop you from addressing this fictional dinosaur that spits eggs by one name or another. Whether that's Birdo, Burdetta, Catherine, or Struzzi. Really, if there's anything to take away from this, it's that you shouldn't be uncomfortable using the name Birdo for her. You could argue that the O ending makes it too masculine, especially given its contrast with Burdetta in the Mario 2 manual. Keep in mind that plenty of feminine names end in O anyway, like Juno, Margot, Jojo, and so on. Hell, there are even masculine ones that end in A, like Dana, Luca, and Jerma. In other words, gendered language is some fake-ass nonsense, so I wouldn't take it too seriously. If anything, Burdetta feels like a bad joke that got taken too seriously. Who knows what that manual writer was thinking really. But in any case, Birdo has spoken for herself in the meantime, and I think we'd all do well to listen to her. Though, then again, who knows what she meant by this.